Okay. Okay. So we're at a point right now that as we go through this time period, this 40 days, taking into consideration, what we're trying to do, what comes at the end of everything that we're looking at right now. So, we're not just looking at the laws of Moshe. What we're predominantly doing is taking a look at the things that Yahshua showed us, because this is where it's coming from. Yahshua is supposed to be showing us the light that was in the law of Moshe, which the children of Israel could not see, in which Shaul actually spoke in the same manner. He says, today when the law is read, there still remains a veil. Well, Yahshua wants to show you the light that was in what Moshe was saying. So the purpose of what the law is all about, this is where it's coming to. So obviously, when we go through this 40-day period, one of the things we want to do, we want to cleanse our thoughts. So this is where it comes first, because the thoughts that we find that comes to us just in the world, when we go outside and when we're dealing with individuals at the workplace, whatever, the people are programmed by another spirit for the most part. Now, this is what is coming to you all day long, unless you're around individuals of like mind, like frequency, like or like magnetism. You're pretty much going to be around people who are, for the most part, being programmed by what we would call the spirit of the world, which is not necessarily the spirit that Yahweh has set up to become separate from the world. Even though Yahweh, the world is part of what Yahweh has, Yahweh has a plan to redeem a certain ones from among men, and men is actually what you call who is in the world. So if he's going to redeem some from among men, okay, so you have to look at it in the same manner. He's going to redeem some from the same world, or from the spirit, or the spirit that holds those in the world, holds them captive to things of the world. So the thought process becomes very, very important, because in the thought process we have to kind of put down the things that the world has actually taught us to hold as important. And we have to look at the things that the Spirit of Yahweh has shown us to be important, because this is all in the transition of becoming sons of Yahweh, if you will, or ascending from that which is just what is of the world, or being redeemed from the world, or being separate from the world. So now, in order to do that, we have to, it's all an ascension. So you're actually ascending when you start cleansing the thoughts, and this becomes the reality. You now become closer to your Father. Your Father is of a higher consciousness, a higher density, and as your flame is being held into the higher light, you are actually ascending as an individual spiritually. Now, so to get where your Father wants you to get now, you have to remember, one of the things that we're doing here is to develop love. This is actually what it is. So now in where we are, where we find ourselves right now, we find ourselves in the place that we are children of, we're looking at is self-realization, self-consciousness. And so what we do as individuals who are aware of self, we look to protect self. And in everything that we do, this is where we find ourselves settled at, trying to protect the individual, try to protect the ego. And this is where the ego becomes so powerful, because the ego is able to move us with the human nature that is captivated under, is able to move us in the place that we protect the ego as the ego is now in its captive state. So someone try to tell us something that will be productive to move us closer to the light, but we find it what you call offensive, then all of a sudden the ego pops up, and the ego wants to defend against anyone trying to show it up for what it is, because what's really happening is the ego is losing its covering. Just as Yahshua would tell the Pharisees, he tells them certain things. He says, now you have no cloak, because whatever he did, he put light there, and they could see themselves, but they got offended. Well, we find ourselves in the same place. Now, to get past that now, we have to come to a place that the thought processes is actually what's being cleansed. And because Yahweh is love, and this is where we're going, we're getting closer to our Father, we have to remember what actually the love that comes into the world now is actually the light, which is what we're trying to receive. Okay? We are trying to receive the spirit of light, which we call the bar, or we call the logos, which is what is in English is actually translated as light. You are the light of the world, but light comes into the world first, and light, it says, is the life, or this logos, or the word is the life and light to all humanity. Now, when we get a hold of that, this is where changes come in. So this 40 days is actually here to get us light. We get ourselves away from the things that are darkened, which are the spirits of the world, and we set those things down in order for light or more light to shine in. Because you may be already on the path, okay, or you may be just getting on the path, but whenever you close yourself off from things that are dark, you are setting yourself up for the potential to allow more light to shine in. Okay, so now remember, you are part of your Father. Okay, and your Father is what? Let's go over to John, 1 John, chapter 1. We have covered this before, but we're going to go there today. And this is going to be what we're looking to uphold or to hold or to get a hold of during this time period. So it says in 1 John chapter 1, let's look at verse 5. It says, "This is the message which we have heard from him." So you got a message now. And you've heard this message from him, the one who received the word, and the one who was here to shine that word amongst us. Okay, it says, "And declare to you." So you receive something from somebody, and it's our duty, if we receive it, to do the same thing, to live in a certain manner, so in that manner that we're living, it's going to go out to others. So in the 40-day time period, when you're cleansing your thoughts to allow light to come in, you are allowing the light that actually is coming from your Father in heaven to actually shine forth to you in a more enormous fashion, if you will. Okay? So as this comes, we can't just hold it to ourselves. We have to display it. You don't have to get on a soapbox and start saying everybody got to do this, but just what you are going to be doing, because now it's coming into you, and what you're going to be, you're going to become filled with this thing, this spirit, and it's going to simply flow from you because you are being filled with this water, if you will, or this light, and it's simply going to move forth from you, shine forth from you, or flow from you, because that's going to be the personality that you're going to take on when your thoughts are cleansed. Obviously, when your thoughts are cleansed, you're not going to be dealing with dark thoughts to bring it out, okay, because it's cleansed now. Now, before it gets cleansed, of course, we're going through a time period that we're struggling, and this is why we need to stay away from certain things for 40 days. So here we go. So we hear this message, and they were declaring it to those who Yahweh allows them to declare it to. Notice now, John is not declaring it to everybody. He said to you, those who are willing to hear him. Okay, so not everybody is ready for it. That Yahweh is light. Yahweh is light. The light that you're going to take on is the Spirit of Yahweh that comes to you. And, okay, so he comes to you, and in him there is no darkness. So when your thoughts are cleansed, this moves out the darkness. And when darkness is being removed, it's allowing more light to shine in, to come into the vessel. So there's no darkness there. Now, we're going to go to the book of John, okay? And remember that Yahshua, at a certain time, he met up with John, or Yachanan. They call Yachanan the Immerser, okay, or John the Baptist, whatever. So he met up with John, and he went through a ritual ceremony, which is called baptism. And baptism simply means that you're going to be immersed in this thing now, okay? Because this water that they immerse the individual in, this water is actually symbolic of the very Word. Remember, the Word is really the only begotten Son still, but remember, the only begotten Son is the water is a symbol of the only begotten Son. Remember that, okay? So this water, a symbol of the only begotten Son. You dip yourself into that water, or you get dipped into that water, you're being immersed. It's all around you, and that's what you're covered by. So Yahshua comes out of the water, and Yahshua perceived something entering into his vessel. This is something that he's doing in mind, because he knew. And he's seeing this come into him, and he heard something saying to him, "This is my only begotten Son in whom I'm well pleased." Not that Yahshua is, but that which is entering into this man's vessel. That's going to possess him now for like 3.5 years after that. It's going to be moving him. So because Yahweh is light, all of a sudden something comes into this man. Well, what is it going to be? Because this is not something that can come into you and I too. Okay? Because remember, if we heard this from him, that Yahweh is light, we heard this from him, and we're going to declare the same thing, the same light. We're going to let the same light out. But the light got to take hold. If it doesn't take hold, we can't let it out. You can't give what you don't have. So here in chapter 8 of John, okay, chapter 8 of John, so this man now received the light, and he says here, this is man, he says, "Then Yahshua spoke again to them, saying, I am the light of the world," or I represent, or I have within me the light to the world. Because the Word comes, and the Word is light, and it's life to mankind. This is what it is. It is life to mankind. So here he is, the light of the world. He who follows me will not walk in darkness. Why? Because he's the light of the world. So obviously, if you have the light in front of you and it's shining, and you're following that light, you can't have darkness. This is a spirit. Now just think of it in a physical manner. You have a flashlight, a very bright flashlight. You're walking at nighttime, but you have a flashlight in front of you and you're shining. Are you going to be in darkness? Would you be walking in darkness? No. Everything around you in that dark place is going to be illuminated. And you're following it. But now think about it. Now take that physical thing and move it now to where you're looking at it in spirit. There is a spirit that you take on that Yahshua says, if you do what I tell you to do, I'm going to give you the spirit. That means I'm going to give you this light. But this light is not going to take hold in dark thoughts or with dark thoughts. This light is to remove dark thoughts, so more light could come in. So it says, it goes here, so you won't walk in darkness, so you're going to be able to see. But we'll have the light of life. What is the light of life? You go right back to John We're telling you that the Word, okay, was in the beginning, but this Word is the only begotten Son that Yahshua took in when the baptism came, and Yahshua now is here saying, follow this light that is within me. Follow this Spirit that I speak through, or speaks through me, that you may also have it, because it's going to lead you to do this very same thing, and you are going to be able to declare the very same things in the world. So this is the light of life, because the light is life to man, and it illuminates his way so he could see how to get out. Now we're going to go to the next chapter of John, and that's 9. Okay? And Yahshua says here in chapter 9, in verse 5, he says, as long as I am in the world, I am the light of the world. Or I have the light of the world in me coming through me. I represent this. So the words that I'm speaking, this is the light, this is the light of life. This is the light of Yahweh. This is Yahweh's life that is coming to you. And Yahweh is in the individual. Now we're going to go to another scripture now. In John again, and we're going to go to chapter 12. Okay, chapter 12. This is where we come in with this practice that we do. So chapter 12, let's look at verse 36 now. While you have light, trust in the light, that you may be children of light. So notice now, when we trust in this light that is given to us, what do we become? We become children of light. Remember, there's a lot of children of darkness, and the children of darkness simply don't have the light, or they reject the light. So the light is dormant. Okay, so however now, when you and I cleanse our thought processes, and we allow light to come in, we become children of light. We lose the dark part of us, and we're becoming something else. But we have to take something on. It just doesn't come. Okay, so during this time, there's certain things that we must look to, because there's something that you want. You want that big flashlight. You want to have it on, and you want to be shining that light as you're walking through this valley of shadow of death, or the valley of shadow of all this darkness that we go through right now. Okay, so now, here we're seeing that if we follow this light, while we have light, we got to follow it. We got to trust in this light. And as we do, we find that in this trust, this is what you become. You're becoming that light also. Now, the wisest man tells us something. The wisest man that lived upon the planet he tried everything, or he experimented with everything. He was an obedient individual by no means, because he tested the waters. He tested everything. He wanted to see how things were going to be going. And he said it. He put his hand to investigate. So he knew what would take place if he put his hand in something that Yahweh said not to. And he knew what would happen if he put his hand into something that Yahweh said to do. And he saw the whole thing. And he was able to come back to you and say, listen here, this is the conclusion of the whole matter. Reverence Yahweh. Because I've tried going the other way to see what it was all about, and I've tried what Yahweh says, and I'm telling you, this is it. Just reverence Yahweh. Because that is the only duty that you have on this planet. Don't worry about all those other spirits and moving off over here, there, trying to figure out how to have more powers of nature. Don't worry about all that stuff. Just do what your Father says. So here in Proverbs chapter 4, okay, let's look at verse 18. Okay? So if we're looking to cleanse our thoughts, okay, and to receive all the love, kindness, compassion, mercy, to replace all that darkness, because all that comes in the light. Okay? You know, being patient, okay, forgiving, merciful, all those things come in the light. When you cleanse your thoughts, you're not irritated very quickly. You receive patience. Okay, so here goes now in verse 18. It says, "The path of the just is like the first light of dawn." Now think about the path of the just now, because the path of the just has that big flashlight in front of it, and you're following this big flashlight. So this big flashlight is, you're moving and you're able to see in the darkness. So you're not going to trip over anything, because it's like the dawn, it's like you could see, which continues to grow brighter until it is full daylight. That's the path now of the just. This is the path of the ones who are going to look to become children of light. That means they're going to follow a certain way, and they're going to trust in it. Trust becomes very important, because if we don't trust, what we find ourselves doing is straying. We stray just like the children of Israel, but they didn't stray because they didn't think they loved Yahweh. They strayed because they were searching for so much more than they knew. Okay? They were searching for, for what would make things work better in their lives. Okay? So when they baked cakes for the Queen of Heaven, they weren't baking the cakes to the Queen of Heaven because they wanted to just get Yahweh upset. No, they were baking cakes to the Queen of Heaven because they said when they did that, it worked better in their lives. So they went ahead and did that. However, in doing that, they stepped away from respecting what Yahweh said. So they went off and listened to somebody else, another spirit in another household, okay, and did what the God of that household or the head of that household was telling them. Meanwhile, they had a head of their own household which they weren't listening to. And when the prophet approached them and said, "Hey, you should be listening to Yahweh," they said, "Nah, our husbands have no problems with this, and we're going to continue doing it." Well, things happened, and we find that the children of Israel kept running into one issue after the other. But this is a path. The path of the just, or what you call righteous, is like the first gleam of dawn, shining brighter and brighter until it's at its brightest point. This is what Solomon told us. Okay. So now, what we're hoping to do is receive this to ourselves. Now, we're going to go to Matthew, because this is what we're wanting to do. We want to receive this to ourselves, cleanse our thoughts, and through certain practices during this time, and not entertaining certain weaker thoughts or lesser thoughts, kind of change the frequency or the channel. Okay, so you don't tune into darker thoughts. When you find them come in, then it's time to move the thought process to something else. Okay, so here goes, we go in Matthew chapter 5 now. Matthew chapter 5 is one of those chapters that Yahshua is telling us, this is how your thought processes, you need to have it. You need to get into this manner, so this is actually what your attitude will be. So this is part of the Beatitudes. Okay? Some folks will say, let this be your attitude. And I would agree with that. So, in this, if we allow what he's saying here to be our attitudes as we move. He says here in chapter 5 and verse 14. This is what you receive. He says, you are the light of the world. Well, you can't become the light of the world unless you do what he did. Because remember, he said, I am the light of the world. And when the apostle says, okay, as we receive from him, who was the light of the world, so we declare to you, because we also have taken on what he said, and now we are the light of the world. So he goes, you are the light of the world. A city which is set on a hill cannot be hidden. It's not going to be hidden to the spirits. And you and I should not hide what Yahweh has put there. We can't hide it. Okay? So we have to allow our light to shine. We don't want to force the light in anybody's face, but we got to remember that we have a light in front of us, and we're following that light. So the things of this world that will cause the average individual to fall into a stump or a ditch, they're not going to fall into it, and they're going to see that you're walking in a different path than they are. So all you got to do is walk and trust in the way that your Father tells you to walk in, because this is what the light is showing you, and others will see the very same thing. So he says, neither do men light a lamp and hide it under a basket, but put it on a lampstand, and it gives light to all those who are in the household. So everyone who is in the house of the planet Earth, they are able to see that light that you are going to shine based upon who Yahweh wants to cause to look at in your direction. And you don't have to worry about showing another person the light or whatever the situation is. No, remember, Yahshua was showing this to like 12 individuals. He died having 12 apostles. Those apostles had many, many apostles, each of them. And their apostles had many apostles, each of those individuals. So he went out just dealing with 12. And some other individuals who actually followed him as disciples also, who followed him. But he had apostles as individuals, because apostles are not the same, doesn't mean the same thing as disciples do. Apostles are emissaries. They're ones that you could send out to do exactly what you said, and they will do it. So they're ones that you could send. Disciples are ones that's going to follow, but they're not given the job for sending out to do your bidding, because they'll follow today, and some of them may not follow tomorrow because something comes up and they don't want to cross a certain line. So apostles and disciples are not necessarily the same. But the 12 apostles are ones that Yahshua is sending out. Okay? So they're disciples and they're apostles. And he's saying, okay, you go out to the 12 tribes, this is what you do. These are individuals all over the world. Now, they didn't reach the whole world during that time. No, they didn't. They couldn't have. And so you have individuals that listen to them, who also went out after them, and of course they were meeting resistance as they went along. But this is how the movement grew. And of course you have infiltrations in it that cause it to become tainted. But Yahweh shows that there's a spirit that he puts out there, and that spirit is going to show you the darkness that has taken over everything. He's going to show this to you. So we're going to read a little further here. Okay? So he said in verse 16 now, he says, let your light so shine before men, so they may see your righteous works and glorify not you, but that which is you're being used by. Okay? Because remember, Yahweh is light. Yahshua had the light, this only begotten Son, come into him, which was the light to mankind. Okay? We heard it from him. Okay? Because as we got from him, so we now declare it outward to somebody else, because it's the same light. The same light is being ignited on one person. He gets filled with that light, or she gets filled with that light, and here it goes to somebody else. That person gets the same thing. It's the same light. It's the same spirit. Okay, so now, so let your light shine before man. And when that goes forth before man, it's the light that is Yahweh. Because you're children of the light, children of Yahweh. You now take that very same light, you're shining that light, okay? And when you're shining that light, the individuals who receive it, their actions are going to glorify your Father just as your actions will be glorifying your Father. Because your Father, the kingdom belongs to your Father, the glory belongs to your Father, the honor belongs to your Father. So whatever you do is gonna add to the honor and glory. And then you're going to be glorified in those things. So look what we have here. You're the light of the world. If we are able to cleanse those thoughts and have other things come in, where we become the light of the world. Now let's go over to Philippians. We're going to go over to Philippians real quick and look at Philippians chapter 2. So you're the light of the world. If we are able to cleanse the thoughts, which is the dark thoughts, allow light, the filaments of light, to actually shine in. This is real light that is coming in. It's coming in through your third eye, and it's illuminating the whole body. If the eye is full of light, the whole body is going to have light. But if the eye is calcified and the light can't shine in, well, darkness is going to take over that eye. And that eye is, notice in that saying eyes, you go look at that scripture, it doesn't talk about eyes as human eyes. It says eye. It's a singular eye. Okay? So, in Philippians chapter 2 now, look at verse 15. Okay, in verse 15. In order that you may be blameless and harmless, the children of Yahweh, or children of light, without rebuke in the midst of a crooked and perverse generation that you walk around every day, among whom you and I have to shine as lights in the world. You and I have to shine as lights in the world. Well, the only way we're going to do that is if we don't hold the thoughts that are of darkness. Because if the eye is light, you are going to be light. If the eye is full of darkness, well, the whole body is full of darkness. Now, here he says in verse 16, holding fast the word of life. This book says the laws of life. Okay? Other books may say the word. Holding fast the word of life, so that I may rejoice in the day of Messiah, that I have not run in vain, nor labored in vain. Why? Because I'm following the light, that big flashlight. And I trust in what I see in front of me when that light is shining upon it. So I will not walk in darkness, but I will walk in the light. Now we're going to go into Revelations real quick here. In Revelations chapter 1, remember Revelations, it talks about these, Yachanan is in the spirit on the great day of Yahweh. And he speaks to these different congregations. That's what they call them, congregations. But really, it's us. It's also us as we are maturing from individuals who, some of us don't want to walk in the right way. Some of us get caught up by the Queen of Heaven. And then some of us actually is dealing with love, brotherly love, which is where the one that the light shines into most deeply. So in Revelations chapter 1 here, we're going to read verse 20. Okay? And it's going to talk about the secret, or a mystery. Okay? In verse 20 here it says, the secret of the 7 stars. The 7 stars. Now these 7 stars are your brothers who have not come into the world. They are guiding your way out of here. Remember the 7 stars? They're at the right hand side of your Father. They're called lamps. Well, they're the ones who shine to you light, and you have to shine from them because they're coming from the Father. Okay? This is light. These are lights. They call it stars. These are light. These are malachim. Which you saw in my right hand, and the golden seven lampstand. The 7 stars are the malachim of the 7 congregation of the house of Yahweh. That means these are the ones who are guiding the people. They're guiding the people. They're guiding them to move in one direction or another direction based upon what they are ready to receive. Because if they don't cleanse their thoughts, they're not going to guide them outside of what they want, unless it's going to work against the overall plan. Because we have powers too. Our will is very powerful. We have a very powerful will. So if we want to go in a certain direction, they're not going to stop us unless going in that direction is against the overall plan. If it's against the overall plan, then we're going to go through some stuff, because we're going to end up doing what is in the overall plan. Now, you think about Jonah or Yana. Okay? Jonah didn't want to do a certain thing. He wanted to go in a different direction. However, the plan was that he was going to go into a certain city, and he was going to do exactly what the Father told him to do in that city. So he tried to do what was desirous for him. But that was not the plan. So circumstances and situations arose in his life, but because he understood the oracles, he understood why it was happening. So he very quickly said, okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and do what I was told to do, because I see that I'm not going to get away with this. And he turned around and he did what the Father said to do. Well, here we're looking at the 7 lamps of the congregation of Yahweh. Now, this is groups that were about during a certain time, but this is also the individual and what you and I have working in us at a certain time, and based upon what we have working in us, they are going to work with us based upon what we have. Just as Moshe worked with the children of Israel based upon what the children of Israel had, didn't force them in any kind of manner because they would leave. Just as Shaul worked with the Gentiles based upon where they were, just as Yeshua worked with the apostles based upon where they were, didn't remove them or move them in areas where they couldn't handle things. He worked with them in order based upon where they were. And here the Malachim does the same thing. So he says here now, this is the Malachim over the 7 congregation of the house of Yahweh, and the 7 lampstand which you saw are the 7 congregations that are supposed to be upholding the light, because they're the light of the world. This was the light. So these are the 7 congregations of Yahweh that are supposed to be in the earth. Now, all of them didn't take hold of this light. Some of them cleansed, but then they went back. Okay, just like the sower with the seed. Okay, so now we're going to go to Revelations 2. Okay. 2, and we're going to read verse 5. Okay, it says, remember, keep in mind, therefore, from where you have fallen, where you and I have moved contrary to our Father. These are things that we know now. Now, this was to what you call Ephesians, which is supposed to be number 4. Okay, in amongst the different what you call the churches, but here it's mentioned as number 1. But they're dealing with these guys first. So in verse 5 it says, remember therefore from where you have fallen and repent. Because we have fallen way down into the valley. Now, this is talking, it says the fourth error of the house of Yahweh, but the fourth error of the house of Yahweh was dealing in earthly things, base things. So now, what it's talking about here is to remember where you have fallen to, because you are in the basement. This is where these guys are. Now, this is who we are too. We have some of us who are in the basement, and you got to think about it, that each one of us, as we're coming into the area of walking in the light of Yahweh, we pass all these different awarenesses or these consciousnesses of what you call the 7 churches or the 7 congregations, because you are a congregation to yourself. In other words, you are a city. Okay, you are a city. And as you are ascending to your Father, you are moving through all these different consciousnesses here that are mentioned as these different churches. Now, I'm not saying these churches didn't exist back in Asia Minor, or these houses of Yahweh or congregations didn't exist. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm telling you, it has more to do with just those congregations, because this is something that is coming past up until our time, and is existing and is showing us or assisting us on how to walk in the light of our Father. Okay, so each one of us are going to be able to look at this personally in our lives and see where we had been or where we are when we look at these 7 churches, if you will, or 7 congregations. So in verse 5, it's telling us to remember how far we have fallen. And if we have fallen, wherever we're fallen to or where we are right now, it says repent. Repent means for us to acknowledge that the way of the Father that He has shown us is right. Okay, and that the way that we're seeking is not the correct way. And simply do what Solomon said, because he went both ways, and he finally said, listen, this is the conclusion of the whole thing. Believe me, because I've tried it all. Just reverence Yahweh. Just do what He says. Okay? And when He opens your mind to something new, then you step on that plateau too. So repent, change, do what is been prescribed, and do the first works. If not, if we don't do this, I will come to you quickly and will remove, notice what's being removed from us, guys? Our light. Our light. The lamp out of its place. Your lamp out of its place, unless you acknowledge that my way is right and that what you're doing is not proper. Because that's how darkness comes in. Darkness comes in by practicing the works of darkness. More darkness comes in, because as we practice more darkness, light is closed off. This is what the fall of mankind is all about. We didn't walk in the way of light, so darkness came in, and we got cut off from the light. So he's saying the same thing here. It's not, okay, well, you do this, I'm going to come and punish you, I'm going to spank you. No, it doesn't have to be that. We are here doing something that is against the natural laws of how light would come in. Well, if we're doing that, it's natural. Yes, Yahweh, natural. That's what Yahweh is about. Natural. The natural laws is going to cause us to lose our lamps, to be removed out of its place, and then darkness comes in, unless we do something about it. And he calls it repent here. That's all we're talking about. He calls it repent. But this is all things that's within our own hands. We have the power to do this all on our own. Okay. But notice now it says, but this you have, and that you hate the deeds of the Nicolaitans, which I also hate. But this you have. Now, these are the individuals that caused the children of Israel to go off. If you look at who these guys are, it basically comes down to the Baals, the Queen of Heaven, and the Queen of Heaven's son with Baal. Okay, so you call it Molech, Zeus, whatever you want to call those guys. Okay, each other's sons. The Queen of Heaven, Ishtar, Ashtoreth, where they make the Ashtoreth's pose, Inanna, Semiramis, whatever. Baals, which basically means all the lords, all the masters. This is what it is, and this is why the word Lord is also came down into our Bibles, or our books, because instead of saying, if you look at the scriptures and you see where it says the Lord, and you look up what the Lord is, you're going to say they removed Yahweh out of there and put in the Lord. Because the Lord was all the Baals. And that's all they did. They made Yahweh, knowing who's dealing with this now, made Yahweh one of the Baals. But if you look at the translations, you'll see the Lord, many times it says Yahweh. So now these three are what is moving what you call the Luciferian rebellion, and they're the ones who are trying to, or have captivated the whole planet with darkness. These are the very same ones that the children of Israel kept moving off to. Okay, and in the scripture it would say, and they provoked Yahweh to anger. No, they didn't have to provoke anybody to anger. They were provoking nature, the very laws of nature, and that which they have agreed to do based upon certain rights that they did with Moshe. This would cause certain protection to leave them, and that's all that was happening. Now, so we're a city, and as a city, there's something that we have to do as the city. Okay? You're the lamp, you're the congregation. This is who you are. Now we're going to go over to Genesis chapter 11. Okay? These three, they're coming from way back. Genesis chapter 11. Okay, so everything on the planet was wiped out, and all of a sudden, certain things started coming back up. Okay, so if you look at chapter 11, okay, you're going to see that there was a great destruction upon the planet, and only certain ones survived. Now, men now started to procreate again, and there's a lot of people that started coming on. So in chapter 11, you look at verse 2, it says, and it came to pass as they journeyed from the east, and they found they found a plain in the land of Shinar, which is Babylon, and they settled there. Now, this, you're looking at something that historically might have taken place, but it's telling you something else. Now, everything was taken out, and this is anew, because it says the hearts of men, in the days of Noah, the hearts of men had grown dark, evil, and so now a reset was going to come about. So a reset comes about, but if you look at this, it says, it came to pass as they journeyed from the east. Now, what's the east? The east is where the light is. The light comes up from the east. In other words, what Yahweh tells you to do. So they journeyed from the light. That's where they're going. And they're settling somewhere else now. And they said, let's go down now, let's go to verse 3. Then they said to one another, come, let us make bricks and burn them thoroughly, They had bricks for stone, and they had bitumen for mortar. And they said, come, let us build ourselves a city. This city, guys, is going to be a whole new government, a whole new order. Because this order, they settled in a certain place, and this new order that they're setting up is something that is journeyed from the east. The light is in the east. Okay? Yahweh says, you pray, or that's what, turn to the east. Right? But they're journeying from the east. They don't want the east. They're going someplace else. So here goes now. So let us build ourselves a city. And this city is a new order. It says here now, a tower. This is you will call it a geopolitical tower or government that is away from the light, whose top or its head is in the heavens. Okay? Or is as the Most High. Remember, you have said yourself, you say, I'll be as the Most High. This is simply the movement of the same ones who want to keep mankind captive. In order to keep you and I captive, they have to move us from the light. They have to move you from the east, and they have to create a government or a system or a programming inside of your vessel. And they come in through your minds, and they control you and I by our own passions and our desires. This is spiritual warfare. This is spirit. This is nothing except spiritual warfare. So they darken us. They darken our thoughts. They darken our desires. So when you come to the 40 days, you find that that's what you have to apply yourself against. What you have been programmed by in this life. So cleanse the thoughts. That's the very first part. Because your thoughts are not in the east. They have been removed from the east and settled somewhere else. It's not about the light. It has been settled in darkness. Okay, cool. So here goes down. So now they're setting up something else, guys. So whose top is in the heavens, okay? Let us make a name for ourselves. Not the name. Now this name is not the name of Yahweh anymore. Because they're moving from the east, but the name of Yahweh is the nature of Yahweh. They're making a nature of themselves with a different head of the family. And why? Let's look at it now. Okay, if we don't, we will be scattered abroad over the face of the whole earth. Okay, so he says, but Yahweh came down to see the city. It says here, the tower which the sons of men or the leaders of men had constructed, came to see this. And Yahweh said, indeed, the people are one. In other words, guys, they're in one accord with this. The whole place is moving in a different direction. And they all have one language. This is not that, that is just one language. He's not necessarily talking about one language. The one language here means that they have the same purpose. They have one purpose. And that one purpose was to move from the light, or the guidance of light, move everybody into darkness, and those who were the leaders were going to hold the others captive in darkness. This happens over and over and over because this is actually what's in the hearts of men. It's in the hearts of men. Why is it in the hearts of men? Because that's the imagination of his thoughts. That's what he brings there by his own thought processes. This is the reason why we have to cleanse our thoughts. Because if we don't cleanse our thoughts, we're going to want to take advantage of our brothers in the same way, because right now we live in a third dimensional or third density consciousness, which we look out to preserve self. So we serve self in that consciousness. However, to come out of that consciousness, we have to learn to love. So we have to serve others, or we can't come out of it. So if we're serving self, we have moved from the east, and we have settled in a place that is self-serving. And the ego that we have picked up doesn't want us to do anything but to protect ego in self-serviceness. But it can't take us anywhere, because we're always going to be trying to work against our brothers. Okay, so what we do in that mindset. Okay, so indeed the people have come to be now one language, one purpose, and this is what they begin to do. After this, nothing that they purpose will be withheld from them. Now, let's go over to Revelations chapter 17 real quick. Hold your place there and go to Revelations chapter 17. Okay? And 17, let's look at verse 13. Okay? Now, it's talking about this great whore, if you will, that sits upon many waters. Okay? But you have to look at this. The first book and the last book, they're saying the same thing concerning one thing here. It says, these have one purpose. This is the same language. Okay? This is the same language that we were looking at in Genesis just now. They have one purpose. Okay. So this is the same intention that you've seen in Genesis chapter 11 and verse 6. And they give their power and authority to this beast, this geopolitical order that have moved from the east and settled somewhere outside of the light, away from the light, or the New World Order, whatever you want to call this right here. Okay? Now, what do they do, guys? Look at verse 14. These make war against the Lamb. The Lamb is the only begotten Son that brings forth the word or the light, that's life to all mankind, that Yahshua received and Yahshua proclaimed to you and you proclaim to others. Okay? And so they have to fight against you when you start seeing the light. That is what they do. They fight against you when you start seeing the light. As Bob Marley says in one of his songs, many people will fight you down when you see the light. Then he says, but let me tell you, if you're not wrong, everything is all right, because your Father is going to be directing you here. But what does he say? You have to trust in that light, that big flashlight that you're following as you're going through this darkness here now. Okay, so now, these are the ones that make war with the Lamb, are those who are submissive to the Father, those who follow and trust in this light. But the Lamb will overcome them, for he is the ruler of rulers and King of kings, and those who are with him are called the chosen. Who are the chosen? The elect. The elect is very hard to fool the elect. It says, if it was possible, even the very elect will be deceived. But those who follow him are the elect. They're the chosen. They're the chosen. They're the elects. And it says they're the chosen and faithful. Faithful? Faithful because they're not going to stray. They're going to do what their Father tells them to do. They're not going to get caught off on moving to what the Queen of Heaven wants in any kind of ideal. And it is binary stuff that they're doing here now today. The Queen of Heaven was male and female, whatever, or confusing that area. And you have the very same thing here today. You go and you look at the songs that they sang to her and how they celebrated her way back in Mesopotamian times there, and you see the very thing that's going on today. okay, with this non-binary stuff, and men changing themselves into women, and women changing themselves into men, and everybody's confused about the gender lines. You see the very same thing was going on with how they celebrated her. You know, that's all that's happening. Okay, so let's go back over to Genesis now. Okay, so the very same thing that was in the beginning, guys, this is what we're looking at also in the end. Okay, so they had actually now taken on the same language, their language. They had one purpose. And so Yahweh says, now I'm going to scatter this purpose. So he says now, come now, I will go down, and there I will confuse their language, their purposes. Well, you see the same thing happening now. Because there are folks that's working against each other. Of course, it's under the guise of one super controller, okay? But as they're being used as pawns, they are fighting against each other because they have mixed their seed with the seed of men or women, whatever you want to call it. Okay, so now some come up and they are legitimately fighting against the order that they want to put in. They're legitimately going up there and they're getting offices in Congress or in Senate, whatever the case is, and they're actually trying to do something about changing laws. So he goes down, so they use their language, have different purposes, that they may not understand one another's speech. You will not understand each other's purposes. So Yahweh scattered them abroad from there over the face of all the earth, and they ceased building that city, that one world order that was coming up during that time. Now we're going to go to Revelations again, chapter 21. Okay? Because Yahweh is putting in a city too. And we have to understand the city, because this city is actually set up through or by Yahweh, but those who he uses to set the city up, actually those who are able to tempt their thoughts and move away from what everybody else is doing. These are these peculiar ones that he's going to use. So we're going to go to chapter 21. Okay? Chapter 21. And we're going to look at verse 14. So in verse 14 now, it says, and the wall of the city, it's another city. It's another city. So we look at the other city that was being created, and that city was one that was moved from the east, and they settled in a certain place, and in that city they wanted to build them a government that would reach the heavens, or its head would be as Yahweh, because that's what she said. I will lift myself up above the stars of Yahweh, and I will be as the Most High. So this is what is being taken. That's what she's doing. Okay, under the Father, the Queen of Heaven is what she's doing. Okay, or the Queen of Heaven is the one that's being used in this whole deal. Okay, so now we're looking at another city, but this city is not one that is removed from the east. This city is one that's in the light. It's in the light. Okay, so now it says here, and the wall of the city had 12 foundations. And in them the names or the nature or the characteristics of the 12 apostles, ones that you could send, of the Lamb. The Lamb? The only begotten Son? The Bar? The Word? The Logos? Which is the light? It's the apostles of light, ministers of light. That's what is being said here. That's what he's talking about here. Okay? And he who talked with me had a golden reed to measure the city and its gates and its walls. So there's another city that Yahweh is building here. And the city is pretty much those who are going to be of the area, of the place, that they're able to cleanse their thoughts, that they could be in the city, that they could be used as ministers of that very light. Ministers of that Lamb, because they're apostles of the Lamb. They have not been removed from the light. No, they have moved themselves out of the way of the darkness, guys, just as you saw those moving, those what you call the churches, if you will, or the congregations. They have moved themselves from that, and they have actually come to light. Now, what I'm going to do now is go to Revelations chapter 3. Okay, we're going to take a look at those individuals. Revelations chapter 3. Okay. And in chapter 3, we'll look at verse 7. Okay, so here goes now. It says, in verse 7, it says, and to the Malik, or the one who is guiding now, of the congregation of the house of Yahweh of Philadelphia. Philadelphia, you know what Philadelphia means, guys? It means brotherly love. They even call it that here. They say the city of brotherly love. Okay. Write these things. Say, he who is holy, he who is true, he who has the keys of David. The keys of David. Do you know what the keys of David is? David was my beloved. That's what David means. My beloved. The keys of my beloved. Who is that, guys? It's not David. David is just being used. Remember, this is my beloved Son, in whom I well pleased. This is the keys of the only begotten Son. It's the keys of the Lamb. David is just being used as the meaning of what it's all about. David means my beloved. So, the keys of who is my beloved Son, in whom I'm well pleased. This is my beloved. Okay? He who opens, because he has the key, and no man can shut. And shuts, and no man can open. This is not talking about David. He's talking about the only begotten Son that you are part of, and who Yahweh has used to project you and I in this place. And when you and I return to the east, or return to the light, we could be used by the only begotten Son. And when the only begotten Son opens the door, no one could close it. And whatever he shuts, nobody's going to open. You and I now have to ride on that frequency. That's what we have to ride on. But we can't ride on it unless we believe it. We can't ride on it unless we cleanse our thoughts. Because that's the only way that we're going to move on that bandwidth and get to where we need to be. Okay. Here goes now. He says, I know your works. Behold, I have set before you an open door. Now, this open door that is being set before you now is the light that is coming through to you. He set before you an open door, and this door is actually the only begotten Son, the consciousness that the only begotten Son is allowing to come through based upon the light that you and I are allowing to come in. This is your open door. This is your door. Your door is the consciousness to the body. This is the door. He set before you an open door. Okay? And no man can block it. No one can shut it. For you have a little strength, and you have kept my word. You have kept my word and have not denied my nature, my characteristics, my name. This is the door. This is how the open door came. The open door came about because you and I have only a little strength because we're caught up in this fleshly body. Okay? But we have kept the word. We have kept the light. And we have not denied the nature, the characteristics of the Father, the authority of the Father. That's what the name is. You have not denied it. And that is your open door, because that is the key. That is the key. It says here, behold, I have given out of those of the assemblies of the accused who preach themselves to be those who worship Yahweh, and they are not, but they attempt to deceive by falsehood or darkness. Behold, I will appoint them for the purpose of worshiping in the presence of your footstool, and they will understand that I loved you. So when they break down, or, when Yahweh brings you before them, He doesn't want you and I to worry about things. Because you and I are simply going to be instruments for a certain purpose. But as we wake up and we get to another area of consciousness, He's going to bring everyone to understand who you are. If we stay in the place that we're going to cleanse our thoughts, just as this 40-day period is beckoning us to. Because this is what's happening. Because we don't have to do it. There's nothing that's saying you're going to be transgressing a whole bunch of laws. No. It's only something that's preparing you. You and I, if we receive that which comes from that, and the strength of it, all it's doing is preparing you for a greater amount of awareness. It helps you to be opened up that you receive more light. But within you and I, if we're not used to practicing this, there are all kinds of things that wants to keep us away. Okay? It wants us to not fulfill it. What are those things? The very things that we're being told to fast from. Because all fasting is abstaining. Abstaining from the things of the ego. Abstaining from the things of the personality. So you can receive the things of the soul.